Dr. Rouse, pleasure to see you.
Hello, everyone.
All right, it's good to see you, man.
Yes, sir.
Good
Good to see you
afternoon.
as well. Hope everyone's doing well on this afternoon.
Yeah, we
It's
are
been pretty in Raleigh. I haven't looked ahead.
okay, we've got a few more folks we're expecting to join, so we'll give it a few minutes before we get started.
Dr. Snyder, how are you?
Doing pretty good. How yourself, Dr. McGinnis?
Oh, I'm a Yankees fan. Everything's right with the world.
You guys got another series of Orioles coming up, don't you?
Huh? We just get to keep playing the Orioles every night would be great. Patrick, welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bruce, welcome. Brent Barbie says to tell you hello.
Thank you. I always like talking with Brent.
Well, that's good. Somebody needs to.
Well, we've got a couple more folks that we're expecting, specifically our board member rep, Ms. Whitford. So I want to give her a chance to join before we launch into the agenda today.
Dr. Crane, I'm getting some emails. Some people can't get in for some reason, so I'm gonna try to respond to those and get back to you just a second.
Okay, thanks.
It may be the passcode. This is one of the few meetings I've had to enter a passcode in, so that may be putting up a barrier to some folks. I don't know. Maybe everybody else had no problem with it, but I had to go back and relaunch it to find that and put that in.
Yep, Dale, that was me too. I had to look up the passcode. So
Great minds think alike. Lawrence.
Bruce, I don't think we've met before, but I appreciate you joining the committee today.
I'm sure. I appreciate the invitation. I look forward to being part of the conversation.
We have some additional experts on the line as well. Stephanie, Carol Ann, So this is a good team. Patrick, how many additional folks are we expecting?
Maybe 2. So we may want to just go ahead and get started. We're at 5 after 2 at this point, and then we can get folks caught up as need be. Co-Chair McGinnis, are you ready to start? Oh, I think you're on mute. Okay, Dr. McGinnis, you are on mute, so we cannot hear you. Oh, you came off and went right back onto mute again.
All right, so how's this?
Perfect.
All right, we'll try again. That won't be the last time I do that, I'm sure. Yeah, go right ahead and let's kick off with the first item of giving everybody a big welcome and thank you for participating. And Patrick, I guess if you can really tell them a little bit of background about what brings us here, and then we'll jump into the introductions real quickly.
Perfect. Be happy to do that. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, really appreciate your time today. I know everybody is extremely busy, and 2 hours is not easy to find for anyone. So what I'll do is start with a bit of an overview about what this meeting is, where we are in the strategic planning process, what we're trying to accomplish. And then we'll do some introductions, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail about the process and where we are. Overall, this is one of 5 planning teams that have been stood up as part of the community college system strategic planning process. And the goal of this work is to take all of the information that we've collected over the last almost 6 months at this point through listening sessions, stakeholder engagement, talking to students, talking to community college affinity groups, and turn it into well-informed recommendations that the state board can consider about where the North Carolina community college system can have a meaningful impact on community colleges and community college students over the course of the next strategic plan. So it'll start this year. We anticipate approval in August of 2022, and it'll run for 4 years. So hopefully you've been able to review some of the material that we shared out. As you can tell, we've got a great deal of feedback through the process so far. And again, part of our work, really the crux of our work, is to narrow the focus, to take all of the information that we've collected and use the expertise in this group to refine it, to winnow it down, and to bring some recommendations to the board. Everybody on this team has knowledge, experience, expertise that helps inform the process. And you can view it as, I think, good luck or bad luck. But the system funding and effectiveness planning team, which you're a part of, I think has one of the sort of most challenging areas to work in, because it's a broad set of feedback that we heard in this area, but it's also a place where I think there's a lot of opportunity to make some improvements for the system as a whole, to better serve community colleges and community college students. So again, I'll go into a bit more detail here in a moment, but wanted to just provide that quick overview, and then we'll do introductions for who's on the call before we go into the next phase. So I can start. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patrick Crane. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives here with the North Carolina Community College System. And I'll ask each of you to share out your name, your role, and one thing that you're bringing to the process. I'm probably bringing a couple different things, having been invested in this process since the beginning, but primarily, a real commitment to just seeing this process through and coming up with a good plan that reflects the values of the system and gives us a clear roadmap for the next 4 years.
I'm the co-chair, working with Patrick to lead this committee, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Dale McInnes, president at Richmond Community College. I've been president here for 12 years, and I guess what I bring is a combination of experience as a multi-time finance chair of the President's Association, have been involved in system level finance, budgeting, and re-engineering over the course of that time. And also, Bruce served as a CFO for a number of years at 2 other colleges in addition to Richmond. So I look forward to working with all of you.
Let's go to Patrick Fleming.
Thank you, Dr. Crane. My name is Patrick Fleming, Senior Vice President, Chief Information Officer for the System Office. What I bring to this group and the effort that we're undertaking, I've been involved with multiple strategic plan development for the state of North Carolina. I've been with the System Office for 8 years. And we used to do information technology strategic plans and agency strategic plans that rolled up to the General Assembly. Miss Ann Bacon and I worked on a couple of those for the agency. And while I am not the end-all expert for all things in the community college system, I believe this team has a representation that might get us pretty close to that. And I look forward to working with this group and knocking system effectiveness out of the park for the 58 and the System Office. Thank you.
Patrick. Anne, and if you want to introduce Stephanie as well, since I know she is participating simultaneously in 2 meetings.
Okay, great. Ann Bacon, Director of Strategic Planning and Policy. I work for Patrick Crane. I have worked with Patrick Fleming on those strategic plans. And the thing that I bring to this group is I'm also your team coordinator. So I'm taking your notes. I'm going to be I will be prompting our co-chairs at time if time gets short, etc. But that is what I will bring to the process. And Stephanie Lake, let's see if she has, okay, let's see. She wants me to speak on her behalf. Stephanie Lake is with Wake Tech. She is I won't get the title right, but she is the leader of NC Cord, and that is the resource development officers for the community college system, brings a great deal of understanding of resource needs at the colleges and how the colleges have sought to leverage different types of funding. And we are delighted to have her on the team. She can add later. She sent a note earlier that she is participating in listen only mode at the beginning of this meeting, so she may add later.
Thanks, Ann. Carol Ann?
Hi, I'm Carol Ann Lyden. I work at Southeastern Community College as the Associate Dean of Research. I just started there. Prior to that, I was with Blue Ridge Community College for 12 years. And during that 12 years, I led the development of 2 strategic plans. So I also have some strategic planning experience. I'm also president of CC Pro, the Community College Planning and Research Organization. And I'm excited to be part of this team and see what we can get done. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rouse?
Yes, hi, everyone. My name is Lawrence Rouse. I'm president of Pitt Community College. have been in higher ed for the last 40 years, have served at 2 community colleges in North Carolina, actually 3, served as Dean of Students at Johnston, President at James Sprunt for 13 and a half years, and now at Pitt for almost 4 years. Of course, I think what I bring is just having a lot of experience in different areas, just being around the system for quite a while. I've seen a lot of changes. Probably one of the more senior presidents serving right now. I'm sure Dale McGinnis would agree with that. So I think I bring experience to this team and just the way of looking at some of the historical knowledge that we have over time. So that's what I hope to bring to you.
Thank you. We appreciate your service. Ms. Whitford.
Hello, everybody, and I apologize for not getting on sooner. It just seems like I was being asked for a password and it wasn't working. But I'm here, and thank you. And thank you all for being here today. What I bring to the table is 16 years of experience as a trustee on my local community college board, Carteret Community College, and 11 years as a state board member. And in that time, I have been involved with many strategic plans. And kind of like what Lawrence just said, I've been around for a while and have absorbed a lot of things and learned a lot of things. So that's what I bring to the table, and certainly hope I can contribute.
Thank you. Gracie, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gracie Davis, and I am the Administrative Specialist and Program Coordinator for the North Carolina Student Success Center here at the System Office. And I've been selected to serve as your team assistant. So I'm excited to bring my administrative and organizational skills to the table and look forward to working with all of you and engaging with you.
Thanks, Gracie. Kevin, I think you're driving, but if you're able to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm off camera. I'll spare you the driving scene for that. Thanks so much for allowing us to be a part of this discussion. I work at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. I'm their executive director. What we bring to the table, I think, for this discussion is the ability to speak for 100 North Carolina counties, and then the perspective that the counties have in working with as partners with the community college system across the entire state of North Carolina. Recently, one of our past presidents had an initiative focused on disconnected youth, and we really became increased partners with the community college system in working out solutions to that issue. Personally, I'm a North Carolina native from Davidson County, and have been in and around state, federal, local government for over 25 years. So look forward to being a part of this group and seeing how we can be of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce.
So Bruce Cole, I'm the Vice President of Business Operations and CFO at Cleveland Community College. I've been here for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was at Gaston College for about 9 years. Also the president for ACPO. What do I bring? A very strong focus on process development, efficiency, analytics, all with a mind to student success, which rolls into, in my mind, recruiting, retention, and completion. So that's my North Star. That's what I obsess about.
Thank you, Bruce. Dr. Schneider.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Schneider, I'm the Associate Vice President for Research and Performance Management. For about 12 years System Office now. Before that, I worked about 10 years at the college level. Really the past 5 years, been focusing a lot on trying to build some statewide efficiencies around data and reporting. And hopefully I can bring this team, kind of background expertise related to anything associated with performance-based funding, since I know funding is a piece of this.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Brandy.
Good afternoon, Brandy Andrews, the Vice President and CFO at the System Office. I've been here at the system office going on 16 years in the finance division. So I hope to bring to the team my finance experience and insight and to be able to support in any way that you need.
Great. Thanks, Brandy. James Willimore is on as IT support. Should we have any issues? He may be with us in other meetings, but he's certainly with us today. So thank you for helping us out today, James. All right, well, again, appreciate the time and the expertise. And Mr. Co-Chair, I think what I'll do is walk through a bit more of the background and some of what we've heard through the data collection about needs for system funding and effectiveness. And then from there, we'll sort of open it up. I'll turn it over to you after going through this background info.
Sounds good. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. All right, do folks see the screen?
Not yet, Patrick.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so quick recap, you've got the agenda in front of you, but this is what we're going to tackle today, is to start with the meeting purpose and ground rules, a bit of the background, and then we'll get into some discussion around not just what have we heard, but what are the root causes, the drivers of change, the things that we need to think about. Again, this is the first meeting. We've got 2 more currently scheduled. If we don't need them, we won't use all of them, but we've got some flexibility built into the agenda today. So we'll work through this as best that we can today. In terms of ground rules, just to level set with everyone, hope that folks are able to come prepared, ready to share, ready to listen. These meetings are streamed and recorded. That enables folks, particularly on the state board and the foundation, who are interested in better understanding these challenges to access these meetings. We hope that you'll be able to share your ideas concisely, that there's room for everybody to share their ideas, since we have a lot of expertise in the group. We may not always agree, that's fine. Gives us an opportunity to refine and improve our ideas. And we'll be capturing them, particularly and taking notes throughout this process. And as I mentioned, we're focused on evidence. So a lot of the information we've collected is situated in the specific places where folks are coming from, and that is important, and that is important for us to understand. But we're trying to think about where the information rests and how to think across the entire system and what data we need to access that. And if there's data that we need that we don't have in the meeting, we'll just identify it and we'll work to bring it to you at the next meeting so that we have all the information we need to move forward. And again, I think one of the natural things folks will want to talk about is what are the solutions, and we'll get to that. But we'll keep a parking lot where we're capturing everybody's input. So today, while we're focused on objectives, if tactics or strategies come up, they will be captured and we'll be able to bring them back into the conversation as we move forward. Very quick recap on what we've done so far. This process really started last September with the annual retreat at the state board. We looked at the demographic and enrollment trends in the state over the last 15 years and what that means for overall community college enrollment projected out into the future. We spoke with college stakeholders, planners, institutional research, adult basic ed, chief academic officers, student services, faculty, students, statewide industry associations, and we had 8 regional listening sessions where we asked college presidents, trustees, and other leaders to tell us about their biggest challenges, their regional solutions that are solving critical issues in their community, and what can the state board and the system office do to better support them. We worked with the board to synthesize that feedback into the 5 major themes. And as you can see now here highlighted in yellow, The planning teams will be working from April through June to refine this feedback into some recommendations for the state board to consider. Our plan is for the state board to review a draft plan in July and then for final approval at the August meeting. These are the 5 themes that have come out of the process so far: faculty and staff recruitment and retention, enrollment, student success for all, economic and workforce development, and then system funding and effectiveness, which is the group that we are in today, as you all know. This is your team. You should have this information, but again, just identifying the fact that we've tried to gather experience and expertise from across the system. The same is happening with the 4 other teams, each one of which will be meeting to do the same work in their own subject areas over the course of the next couple months. The rough outline here is that we're focused on bringing the state board some key objectives. What are the big areas that we need to be working on where we can have a meaningful, positive impact over the next 4 years on community colleges and community college students? Underneath that, we'll have strategies and tactics, and we're roughly hoping to focus on them in this progression. We may need to spend more time in one area or the other. That's perfectly all right. That's why we have 3 meetings scheduled, so that we have the time to go through the data, to have the discussions, to arrive at good, well-informed recommendations for the board. In terms of plan structure, we've got these 5 broad themes that have been identified by the board. We'll be developing objectives under each of those, strategies and tactics underneath them. We want to end up with a plan that is clear, focused, and has a manageable number of key metrics. Our current strategic plan ended up with 34 different tactics, I believe is the right number, that we're tracking. And a lot of them are tracked on outputs. What did we do rather than outcomes? What did we measure and how did we know we were successful? And so we're looking to end with a plan that's really clear, that can really guide actions for the state board and the system office in the work that they do supporting the 58 community colleges. One of Ann Bacon's roles in the team is to keep us honest about language. And this is how we're defining objectives in this work. The aims that propel the community college system towards their goals. They should relate directly to the plan, team, topic, and goal, be clear, start with an action verb, and are stated in terms of results. Again, we'll get deeper into strategies, tactics, and metrics, but wanted to be clear about the language that we're trying to use here as we move forward. So in terms of just adding some clarity to that, if our goal were to increase volunteerism, our objectives would be perhaps to increase the amount of volunteering, expand who volunteers, innovate what opportunities can be found. So we're looking at this level of objectives as we go through today's conversation. In terms of background on the topic, you've seen the synthesis document as well as the more extensive feedback that's been captured through the regional listening sessions. This is not exhaustive. Again, there's a lot of feedback that we've collected, but in looking through the areas that we've collected information on, we're tasked with looking at system funding. We probably need more. Questions around the budget model have come up. What can we do to improve stability and predictability, create incentives for collaboration, and make it easier for colleges to fund new programs? These are all specific concerns we heard raised. We know that there's not enough capital funding. This is a particularly acute problem in rural areas, but not exclusive to them. So what are the things that we can do to address capital construction and equipment? And then system effectiveness. This captures a lot of different things, but we heard feedback around data and innovation, better data sharing across systems, how the system can focus on innovation and play a convening role, technology and cybersecurity. This is everything from broadband access to stopping cyber attacks, as well as ensuring that our ERP systems and other technology systems function effectively across all 58. How can we streamline our process and cut red tape? I think we've heard this clearly, not just from our stakeholders across the 58, but from our board as well. They're very interested in how the system office and the state board can make things easier for colleges and eliminate redundancy and red tape where it's unnecessary. And finally, how can the system office provide enhanced leadership and supports? Purchasing contracts, subject matter expertise, better communication, convening on important topics. So again, there's a lot here that I think our task is to focus in on the areas where we can have the most meaningful impact. The last thing I'll say here is, again, part of this work is identifying some of the root causes and the drivers. What are the things underneath these challenges? What are the levers that we have at our disposal? What are the structures and incentives that can be put in place? What's feasible? What can we do in the short term where we can have some quick wins and affect some positive change, but also where are the areas where we might need to focus more long-term and sustained change. So I will stop.
All right. Patrick, is this the point where you want me to jump in?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. Let's stop right there and see if anybody's got any questions about the process that Dr. Crane's outlined and the steps. I'm going to take a little different approach to frame it in a way that may help us all connect it better. We've got a very eclectic group of folks here that are coming at this from different perspectives and experiences. But let's stop right quick before we go any further and see if there are any questions. Okay, so everybody's on board with this part of it. So we want to make sure, since this is going to be something that's going to be living for 4 years, that we commit the time, the effort, the energy into it. And I want to help build on what Patrick's talked about by reminding us of the synergy and the connectivity we have between colleges and each other, the colleges and the system office, and our system as a whole, which is led by the state board. So we really have those relationships and connections that we're trying to focus on how we can strengthen and build the connectivities, the synergies from college to college, okay? From system office to individual college, from system office to all 58 colleges, and looking to the state board on their role in implementing this plan. So the end product, Patrick, that we're turning in is going to be something that's going to be acted upon by the state board, and Ms. Whitford chairs the committee. Ms. Whitford, is there anything you want to add at this point to further build on this conversation?
The only thing I'd like to add is that I'm 100% in agreement with what you just said. This really is a 360-degree process. It's not just cut and dry. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. There is a lot more to this process, and you've just outlined some of those, some of the things that we want to try to achieve with this new strategic plan. And I certainly am hoping that we understand. Patrick, you said if we don't need 3 meetings, we won't use them. We might need more than 3 meetings, depending on how this conversation goes. And we are committed as a state board and as the system office to take whatever time it takes to get this right. There's a lot here to be discussed and a lot to be considered. So I'm very interested and looking forward to this conversation. And President McGinnis, I think you're spot on with your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So here's how I'd like to get us kicked off. Number one, I think Patrick gave us a good outline. Patrick, if you can pull that list of potential issues up, beginning with the funding and the need of more funding, we can use that as a starting point. And I don't want anybody to think that list is extant. That is not those aren't the only things that we can focus on. Okay, those are what came out of the listening session. But if our conversations and your research, your input, your expertise leads us to related issues, then we certainly want to have those considered. Part of this process is it's going to take time on everybody's part outside of these meetings. I want to say that up front. Patrick and I have had some really productive conversations about how to go about this. There's going to have to be some homework that happens between meetings. We're going to talk about that a little bit. There won't be any grades attached, I promise. I'm not going to grade anything. I don't have a red marker anyway anymore. So we won't be grading it, but we're going to need some thoughtful reflection that can only be accomplished with some time in between meetings. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's look at this list and this breakdown under system funding. Now, I think we already have a good head start in crafting our product we're going to deliver to the state board. Number one, it says need for additional funding. Well, let's talk about the 3-year strategic budget request that the state board approved back in January for all 58 colleges. And I think it's well suited to be placed in this plan because we are intentionally strategic and multi-year in approaching it. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, I'm going to touch on it for just a minute, just to make sure you realize how far-reaching and broad it is. It's focused on 2 elements: the value of our students, the value of our employees. So right now, Brandy, I believe $245 million over 3 years, $61 million in the short session for the consideration of the General Assembly. This is all recurring FTE funding. And it is the rising tide, I believe, that lifts all the votes across our system. So there's nobody that's left behind. Value of our employees is focused on our employee salaries, with an additional 1% asked for in the short session for next year, on top of the 2.5% state money we've already received that's effective July, and then a 3.5% request for each of the next 2 years. So our biennium request is already out there. It's the first time we've ever submitted a 3-year request, and it's the largest request either on a 2 or 3 year basis in the history of the system. There are no strings attached. It's all based on enrollment and building that back up. So I think that gives us a running start, Patrick, into having a component already identified. That piece is already done, and I think it's appropriate, even though it was developed through the legislative committee of the state board, Ms. Whitford, for it to have a place in this strategic plan. Talk about a few other things, and I'm going to stop and get your thoughts and feedback and see what everybody's got on their minds. I'm going to send out an email to everybody on the group with some notes that I think may help us frame this out. I want to start off with good policy always should drive good action. We need to take advantage of this opportunity and develop good policies that can be adopted by the state board or procedures that can be adopted by the system office and the colleges that promote, incentivize actions that best serve our students and communities. I'm going to give you some examples of how that's worked in the past. I can go back to 2010, Lawrence, and you and I were in the room when tiered funding was first approved. That tells you seasoned, I think is the word Lawrence used. We're both seasoned on this. So tiered funding wasn't always in place. It's a relatively recent development. And the tiered funding recognized that not all courses carry the same cost and should earn different levels of revenue. And the positive action that that policy drove was encouraging and funding higher demand, higher cost programs that in most cases ended up in higher salary careers for our students. It gave us greater capacity. Another example that happened a couple of years later was summer FTE funding from the state. Up until about 2012-13, we didn't get any state budget FTE for summer funding. It was all operated on a self-supporting basis. And so as a result of that, our summer schedules were fairly thin. Lawrence, am I saying that correctly?
That is exactly right. Those were some developments that certainly helped the colleges to offer those courses during the summer, which we were able to offer them, but they were self-supporting. So this certainly helped us a great deal.
And so as a result of that, by getting, it didn't cost much that first year, but colleges soon took advantage of it, modified their schedules, modified their curriculum, and students were able to graduate sooner, take a wider range of courses during the summer, and we had more graduates, we had more students coming back from the university able to take advantage of lower cost, high quality courses. And that's another example of good policy driving positive action. The last one I'm going to mention is more recent, and that's parity funding for continuing education. And Brandy, you were very much involved in that. That's about 3 or 4 years ago. We worked on it for a couple of years. As a result of that now, we can be much more responsive and adaptive as colleges to our students and our corporate partners in providing short-term workforce programs, not just courses. Before, when they were funded at about 2/3 of the curriculum rate, you couldn't afford to have full-time non-curriculum faculty. Now, that's a possibility. And we're not forced to cram everything into the curriculum format. So those are 3 examples of how within the funding formula, we made adjustments that incentivized a change in how we teach, how we program, and how we better serve our students. The other thing I want to bring up and remind you as we're crafting these objectives and strategies is we need to have some mindset on what the constraints are and what the timelines may be. Some of these needed changes may be within the auspices of the state board code, state board policies that they have the authority over, and their timeline for making those changes is often relatively soon. They can turn that around. On the other hand, some of the changes, especially dealing with the funding model, may require statutory legislative approval. Sometimes that doesn't take too long, sometimes it does. We've had examples where we can find a supportive member of the House or Senate and craft a piece of legislation, and it's in the next budget bill. Other times that takes more than a year to go through committees and to get implemented. So as we're talking about these, we'll try to, Patrick, keep that in mind and give folks some idea of what level of approval some identified changes may require. Under system effectiveness, I go back to my comment to sort of paint a picture for you and help frame this. Help me answer this question. How can we better work together? We talk about being the community college family a lot. How can we work together as a family to support the missions of each individual college and our mission as a system? So how do we create stronger connections between colleges, inter-college connections? And how do we strengthen the connections and improve the efficiency and effectiveness between the system office, led by the state board, and the respective colleges? My last thing I want to remind everybody of, let's make a distinction between efficiency and effectiveness. Two different things. A lot of seasoned, experienced strategic planners out here, and those words often get used interchangeably. We want to be both, and there may be cases where we need to be improving efficiency, but there may be cases where we're really talking about effectiveness. So Patrick's words on choosing the right word are very appropriate. I think the subtle change that we're going to make in today, based on my conversation with Patrick, is instead of bringing this all together, having introductions, going over this, and then expecting everybody to craft 3 objectives in one sitting, very ambitious and very aggressive. So we may refine that a little bit and help give y'all some guidance and some homework to craft your ideas, your feedback, your potential objectives. So we'll have time to submit those to Patrick. Who would they go to? Would that be to you or to Ann, or who should they send those to once we come up with that?
You can send them to both of us, actually.
Okay. All right. So the game plan, I think, is that we're going to talk some more and answer your questions and have some conversation with the ultimate goal of, once we leave here today, you're going to be armed with the framework to be able to reflect on this and shoot out your thoughts, ideas, that we can then organize, prioritize, and synthesize for the next meeting, as we sort of narrow this down from the big funnel that started with the listening sessions to this next step. And sending out a message right now that sending up a follow-up email with your info and everything. So don't want everybody to be distressed that, oh, we've got to rush to judgment here. I appreciate Ms. Whitford's comments. We're going to make the best use of her time. I'm going to stop right there and see if anybody's got any comments or questions. And if everybody's on board with these next steps that we're talking about.
President McGinnis, I thank you for that discussion. That is spot on. My question is, would it be helpful for the group, and this is a question to the group, would it be helpful for the group to look at what was on the screen at each one of those bullet points and talk about what we think that means, so that I think we're going to get a homework assignment. Would that be helpful for us in the homework assignment to really understand those bullet points that were on the screen and maybe discuss them a little bit?
We can work through those exactly. That was really going to be the next step, Ms. Whitford. I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a break, and no problem. We'll jump right back onto that. That was going to be the next step. I started with the first one so that we would have a checkbox next to the new funding, but absolutely, we'll work through the rest of those lists. That's why we wanted to bring it up. Will that help to go ahead and do that? Is everybody okay with that process? Okay.
President McGinnis.
Yes.
This is Kevin Leonard. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Thanks for leading us through this. I appreciate the co-chairs doing that. I I don't know, I wanted to put this out there as a point of information for me. I don't know if it fits into conversation now or sometime in the future, but a discussion about how your local boards play into the sort of the schematic that I heard you sort of lay out, meaning that you're talking about interconnectivity of the community colleges working together, then how the colleges work with the state board. And then I'm hearing a lot of that connectivity and you're discussing that makes sense to me. From the local perspective, I'm curious, how does your local board made up of local people, including, county electeds and other folks who are in your community, how does that play into this discussion? And if that's something that's been covered already.
No, it's good question, Kevin. I appreciate it. And I appreciate that insight and that angle. When I mention college, I'm being inclusive. And so when I'm talking about the local college, I'm talking about presidents, board members, employees, and students, as well as especially the Board of Trustees. What we're expecting is happening, Kevin, is that the president and the local boards are working in concert with each other, and that the presidents are the face of the college, supporting the strategic plan of each local college and their local missions. So the trustees are a very valuable partner and component, both individually at the local level at each 58 college, but also collectively through the Trustees Association. So when we put our budget plan together, the Trustees Association was brought in right up front to be an active partner in helping craft that, and their association approved it as well. So, but the expectation is that there is a strong working partnership connection between each president and their respective board. Does that help?
It does. Thank you for that comment. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I would never want to talk about a board of trustees separately from the president. Lawrence is a fellow president. Am I saying that correctly? We ought to be speaking of them as a team that are working again in concert towards common goals.
Dale, you're exactly right. The president and the board work in tandem to administer the college. Of course, the board is for policy, but we carry it out. So we're a team, basically. So, we cannot exist without each other.
And I think it's important that having the county commissioners represented here is an important recognition of the contributions, investments our counties make to the colleges. We're unique in the country in that statutorily, the counties are required to support operations, grounds, maintenance, facilities through 115D. And that's a unique partnership and configuration that doesn't exist anywhere else in the state government, and rarely exists in the rest of the state systems in other states in the country. So absolutely, while we talk about state funding a lot, unfortunately, Kevin, there are 58 different models out there for county funding.
Yes.
And I've worked at 3 different colleges. Lawrence has worked at 3 different colleges, and I think Carol Ann's worked at a couple. We've all seen different models out there, depending on obviously resource availability and the size of the institution. So there's no way to really craft and target an objective for the state board to aim at the counties. They're not negotiating and working with each county on their support for their respective colleges, but the state board, Ms. Whitford, is working directly through the system office staff and President Stiff with the General Assembly. So that's why you see an emphasis on the state formula and the state FTE. Am I saying that correctly? Okay. So for Ms. Whitford's recommendation and question, can we pull back up that screen again and take a look at your list, Patrick?
We sure can. I see Ms. Whitford has her hand raised. I think
I'm
Patrick.
sorry, go ahead, Ms. Whitford.
In concert with what you have just discussed, when we had our listening sessions with our presidents and with our other partners around the state, we heard an awful lot from each individual college and stakeholders. We heard an awful lot of things that were in common, concerns that everybody had in common. So as a state board member, I'm looking at, and I think our board, I think I speak for our board, we are looking at what are those areas that we can identify that we heard some concerns from really all the colleges across the state and most, if not all, the stakeholders. What are those concerns? And is there a way to leverage the power of our system? And our system is the state board, the system office, and all the faculty and staff there, our president, our system president, our 58 community college presidents, 58 boards, and the students at those 58 institutions. That's a lot of leverage if we can act together. If we can identify the areas that we all have common concerns, and I think we heard a lot of that, let's identify those areas and see how we can work as a team, everybody, to see what we can do to move the needle on some of these. I think that is the other aspect of what President McGinnis was saying. And that's where I come from as a state board member. What can we do to help all the colleges with common concerns by leveraging the power of the whole system? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts and reactions to this list as we look at it. So we've got the FTE budget model. I mentioned some of the recent changes that have been made in it. And there's some places that I think are potentially ripe for modernization. And that requires a pretty deep dive into that model. And we'll have to share. Brandy, that's pretty complex, but it's not something that folks we can't share and educate folks on. One of the things, Patrick, that I think came up to Ms. Whitford's point, there were multiple comments about incentivizing collaboration and reducing competition. Was that not a common theme that you picked up on as well?
Absolutely.
So I think that's one. And as we're updating the information that we probably need to add to this list, that I seem to recall popping up in more than one place. So if we can, and I think that's really important. This is a dynamic situation. This is a dynamic list. It's not static. It is not set in stone. Obviously, we want to be able to draw from all that intensive work Patrick's team led with Ms. Whitford on the listening sessions. And Whitford, I think you were on multiple listening sessions. You heard a lot of this personally. So are there any other items on here under system funding that folks are concerned about or think we need to include?
So President McGinnis, Patrick Fleming here from the System
Yes,
Office. A couple of questions. One directly in response to your question. I held some listening sessions, regional listening sessions with our information technology teams, representatives from the 58 colleges from the technology teams. And one of the primary concerns that those groups had, and we're addressing this, but has to do with the technology staffing at each one of our 58.
Sure.
And you and I have direct chat, we've both been challenged by this here at the system office.
Sure.
And at the colleges. I will say President Rouse is doing pretty good down there in Pitt, and I'm sure he's feeling strong with his team there. But the disparity across our system is real when it comes to technology capabilities on campus. And I didn't want to get away from system funding, but the compensation for staff across our system doing the same job, more than likely, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I would imagine varies. And that has been a significant challenge, not just at the local college level, but getting into the system effectiveness items. When we attempt to operate, maintain, and coming here in the next 60 days, begin to roll out new technologies, that capacity and capability at each of our 58 becomes very apparent.
Right.
And so any, I guess I would say, consideration there along the 1% increase and those increases, the technology teams should also be included there. And again, y'all know a lot more about how that.
Absolutely, Patrick, great point. And when we put the budget request together along with the justification and the selling points, the very things you're talking about were highlighted and were a major priority. So when we talked about the gaps that we have, especially in our middle-sized and smaller schools, but we're not limited to just us, the facts that we're finding it's very difficult to recruit and retain folks. Technology and networking and systems expertise was very, very high on that list. But I think it begs a question. It's not just about being able to pay for talent. It's about how is the talent really utilized, and where is the talent needed? Where are there synergies that we can take advantage of? We've made some changes, even in the last few years behind the scenes, where there's some state contracts that are now being, if they're handled at the state level, it's one less thing for the local colleges to be able to do. And if the state office, the system office, can buy something in bulk, whether it's services or product, or software, and get a better price than 58 different purchase orders. Those are examples of both improving the system funding by saving money, but also improving system effectiveness. So I think this ties into an example under both the technology and cybersecurity, but also one of the bullets we need to add and is under system effectiveness is leveraging system buying power. I think that came up a couple of times as well in your listening sessions. Where can if we all had to negotiate our Blackboard or LMS, that's a really good example. We'd spend a lot more money and be a lot less effective. So where is the sweet spot, Patrick, where the work needs to be done at the local level, and where can it be farmed out? And I think that becomes a question that needs a deeper dive.
Yes, and you're spot on. And to Ms. Whitford's comment about all of the talent that we have to pull from across our system, not just from employees, but also the students. If there's one thing we do better than anybody else is produce talent for North Carolina. And Mr. Cole at the ACBO conference, the Association for Community College Business Officers, approached me on this same topic, which was how do we get the best value for our dollar in some of these state level contracts? It's going to take a team, not just from the system office, but with representation from associations like ACBO to get the right people at the right place in the right room to make these happen. I think too many times I know that the system office can feel the brunt of all 58, and that's a lot of weight to carry. So along Ms. Whitford's line about synergies and using those, as you said, President McGinnis, using that the skills from across the system, I think we should pay some attention there.
Patrick, you're exactly right. I got Ann with her hand raised, and I got Bruce. So Ann.
I'll just briefly mention when this is a couple of comments back, but when Patrick Fleming was talking about IT talent, one of the things that's going to happen throughout this process is a number of issues are going to interrelate with other planning teams. We do have a whole goal on faculty and staff recruitment and retention. And it could be broader to include kind of the right management structures or the things like that. So what I would say is I will, after this meeting, put into a parking lot items like IT talent that will go over there, but you all may want to watch and hear updates on. And yes, I'm hearing a lot of other comments, so I'll stop there.
All right, Bruce, I've got your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I think my comment might be going in the parking lot too, but I'll go ahead and offer it. And that goes along with what Patrick Fleming was saying regarding IT salaries, and I think more broadly just staff and faculty salaries in general. We look at the state salary limit that we have in place for the colleges and compare that to like the NCCCS pay scale. And what we see is that the most we can pay out of state funds is like a level 7 on the DIT pay scale, which runs from 1 to 14. So there are 7 levels of their pay scale that we can't even reach because we're limited on the amount of state funds we can use to pay someone.
That's a great point. And that's exactly the kind of detail that needs to be brought up, because the folks that are setting that, we need to be able to put that on the table when the budget package is being developed and framed out, and find out how that can be updated, amended, or exceptions be developed for. Who else has a hand up? Who else got a comment or a question?
Ann Whitford does.
I'm probably just restating what Patrick Fleming just said, and maybe a couple others of you as well. When we are going around and listening to the colleges, particularly the smaller colleges, as has been stated earlier in this panel, are struggling finding enough money to hire the tech people they need. One of the items that has been discussed to maybe help solve this is have regional teams made up of the expertise that the smaller mid-sized colleges just can't afford to hire on their own, but have these teams available that can go from college to college and provide what they need on a temporary basis as needed. And I think that's just a restatement of what several of you have already said. But Patrick Fleming, I know you're going to come up with some excellent suggestions in this area.
Patrick, would you mind talking about, that's a great pivot, Ms. Whitford. Would you mind talking about how the template you're creating right now for the cybersecurity staff around the state, and how that can actually be applied in other ways? So tell us about what's fixing to roll out with the folks you're hiring to go around the state to support cybersecurity at our campus.
Thank you. As y'all are aware, we were provided $1.49 million in recurring funds in the last budget, and that money will be used to create, and is being used now, to create a regional information security officer program. And those funds provide 9 information technology security and compliance managers, right? So think about cybersecurity experts, 9 cybersecurity expert positions. And regionally, we can group our college together or group our colleges by region. And we create what we affectionately call tiger teams that can be focused on their particular region. It's that simple. And to Ms. Whitford's comments, creating a structure that can help our colleges where they can't help themselves, or they have staff turnover, or just shortcomings, or the technology is just too difficult to manage at times. This regional approach can be effective, right? It's one of those, I think, that crosses that efficiency and effectiveness line. The challenge we have, historically, the system office has played that role for all 58. And continuity and standardization of services at the colleges, technology services at the colleges, is important. I think a few of y'all have heard me say that the majority of your students don't come to a community college because your general ledger is awesome, right? But we have many different or a lot of variant across how each college uses the technology available to them to do budgeting and accounting and common back office processes. So when we try to create a regional support structure, the less difference across our 58, the more effective that structure will be. And unfortunately, we've just had these systems in place for 20 years or more, and that has created that variant across the 58. So looking at ways we can standardize our solutions, technology solutions we have in place, and our business processes for that matter, will help. We shouldn't feel threatened by standardization, because that local configuration, that local need, of course, is obvious and real. But some of those back office processes, quite honestly, you wouldn't notice, right? Until you get into a difference, and then you have, say, a cyber event or some unfortunate situation that requires a response from one of these regional teams, the learning curve simply spikes where it shouldn't. And that's where standardization can help.
Patrick, I appreciate that about as much as anybody. I was in the idea for the regional experts came up in my office the Sunday after our cyber attack in July of 2019. So I know exactly where that came from. Let's pivot a little bit away from technology and take the idea that just came out. Patrick talked about all 58. And I think part of the themes, one of the themes that I heard from this, and Patrick Crane and Ann and Ms. Whitford, I heard a lot of varying responses and saw a lot of varying comments based on college size. And I think part of what we've got to recognize under system effectiveness is one size fits all is not going to be the answer all the time. And too often, we have both in the funding formula and in our policies and procedures, we are trying to get Wake Tech to conform to do business the same way as Pamlico, using the two extremes. And I think Patrick's enrollment report that he presented to the state board a few months ago, longitudinally going back to pre-recession 2008, paints a really clear picture of how different our college enrollments and sizes are compared to where they were 12, 13, 14 years ago. The difference between the largest and smallest is much greater. That divide is much larger. I think we have an opportunity within this to reimagine exactly how can we accommodate the needs of the Wake Techs and the Central Piedmont and Lawrence, the Pitt community colleges, and the smaller colleges. And Lawrence, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, because you're uniquely positioned to talk about it, having been at James Sprunt for many years and now leading Pitt. Am I speaking this correctly, or am I off base?
No, you're exactly right, Dale. And actually, as you were talking, I thought about all three colleges I served at. One was Johnson, which I'd probably consider mid-size, and then James Sprunt, which was a much smaller institution, and now at Pitt, which we're at the 6th largest. But looking at the needs for all three were very, very different, and the way that we could respond. I think Patrick also remember when I was at James Sprunt that we had a very, very crucial part of our information system that was end of life, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And so we started talking with the system office about coming up with solutions. And now moving to Pitt Community College, they're pretty much self-sufficient when it comes to those sort of things. So I think any solutions that we come up with, including system funding, system effectiveness, has to have what I'd call equity among all colleges. So the small schools may have a different approach or different solution than some of the larger institutions. So I think we have to, as we roll out these plans and, making sure that we consider that each school is different in size, but also in character. So you're exactly right that we definitely need to consider the sizes of the institution as we pull this through. This is an opportunity for us to do it. We've never done it before. So it's probably won't be easy, but I think that we need to put that in the conversation.
I use it as an example of how we've really got to reframe the whole conversation and act like we're operating off of a blank canvas. There's an opportunity here to not just accept the rules the way they've always been and to really challenge the status quo in a provocative way. Patrick, you brought up a really good point that triggered that, Patrick Fleming. You triggered it when you talked about the different colleges and their different needs and how you're having to craft individual solutions right now around those. But shouldn't we have some flexibility around many of these policies and procedures that we're binding multiple colleges to? There's been some flexibility with that, such as in construction, where they've recognized that some colleges can have higher construction limits and do bigger projects than other colleges. But where are other opportunities to free up the larger colleges and better support the smaller colleges? I'm in an interesting place. Our college is somewhere in the middle, but where the majority are. But we shouldn't have policies or a funding mechanism that holds colleges back from fulfilling their mission, nor should they be limiting the success of our smaller ones. So I put that out there for you to sort of help me find ways that we can, if we reimagined not a one-size-fits-all, but a small, medium, and large approach, where are opportunities to make improvements along those lines? And I'm going to ask the folks that hadn't spoken up, Carol Ann, some of Brandy, your thoughts. Don't hesitate to jump in. We want to hear from you. And Carol Ann, you did a great job on the Performance Measures Committee. Always glad to have you back and to work with you again. So welcome your comments and your ideas.
Well, thank you. I agree with everything being said, and I'm really interested and invested in the idea of standardizing some of this technology. Working in Informer, I really am up close daily with the need for that and the inability for other colleges to share Informer reports because everyone has set Informer up 58 different ways. And at my new college, there is not an Informer expert on the IT team, whereas at Blue Ridge there was. So that's an interesting challenge to my job now, is having really no one to go to for assistance with that. And it all goes back to kind of how Colleague was set up 58 different ways. So I would love to see something where we have an opportunity with Informer 5 to do it, have some consistency across the community colleges. And I'm sure there's other technology, and I love the leverage system buying power idea. I do have a little bit of hesitation with that because not like, for example, with MZ, and that was an awesome opportunity for a lot of 58 colleges who had not been able to fund that study, but we had just done it the year before. So we are now, I had to set aside a ton of work to collect a lot of data for MZ for the 5 program studies and the overall study when I had just done it all a year before, and I knew it wasn't going to be that different. So I have a little bit of hesitation in saying, hey, we're buying this all for you. And now it means, 45 hours worth of work for you at least.
Sure.
So just some things to think about as we, move forward and with those ideas. And I wonder, do you want us to get input from, our colleges, our teams?
Absolutely, absolutely. Y'all are representatives of your associations and your colleges. So absolutely, no problem at all with that. I think that what we don't want to do is make this a circular firing squad where we go back and reinvent the listening session all over again. We are wanting to come up with solutions. We're wanting to come up with things that we can implement. And I think the problems have been stated and restated. They may need to be clarified and refined and better defined, but the solutions are really what we're trying to tackle. Patrick Crane, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, you've got it absolutely right. I'll go back to, sort of the beginning of the conversation. We've got a lot of feedback. Now we need to add the additional context, information, data, and specificity. And we've already heard great examples of, specific challenges that need to be addressed, but within this, bigger framework that we've been talking about of how do we best situate ourselves to take advantage of the strength of having both 58 colleges and a system. So I think both are assets, and a lot of the feedback around system effectiveness could be bluntly characterized as system office do better. And
we're going to take a deep dive into that piece of it, and that really, we hadn't touched on that, the communications piece. I think we've all got a lot of respect for each other, and we're all mutually reliant and dependent on each other, but these are conversations that are going to have to be honest and candid, and the areas where improvement is needed, we're going to have to point it out. Communications came up a lot in that feedback, and the challenges that we're facing, having a recent change in administration at the system office level, following several recent changes, and now it seems to be stabilizing a little bit. We've got to, I think, look for ways to build a two-way stream of communication between the system office and all the colleges, and having that reliable, predictable, and clear and concise. Just getting reports isn't enough. We need to know who we're talking to, who has the answers, who does what. There's been a lot of changes in a lot of positions, a lot of roles. That's the nature of life, especially post-COVID, but we hope post-COVID anyway. But we've got to do, I think there's an opportunity here based on the fairly pervasive concerns about communication to better understand what's going on, when it's going to happen, what it means to us, and who's in Raleigh to help us and what their roles and responsibilities are. So look for ways for each one of you to frame how you'd like to see that happen. How can we improve communication as a two-way street? Okay, the only way we're going to build relationships and build trust is if the communication is reliable, frequent, accurate, and runs both ways. So that was one that jumped out under that system effectiveness that almost, I think, demands its own line, Patrick. We've got it buried in with a lot of other stuff. Purchasing contracts fits in with leveraging buying power, but I think the communication piece, I'll turn that over to the rest of you and get some response. Am I overstating that, or is that something that you're as concerned about as I am?
I second that one wholeheartedly.
And it works both ways, Patrick. I want to make sure people know you're sending stuff out right now, and we appreciate it. We're getting reports from your office and from you, but we've got an obligation to report back to you what's happening on a timely and accurate basis too.
Right.
And part of this message has to be that we are all going to have to be accountable if we're going to do better under these difficult circumstances. Other folks' comments and thoughts on communications.
Dale, this is Lawrence. I think for any organization to function effectively, we've got to have good communication, good two-way communication. As you know, as president on your campus, on my campus, we have to communicate both up and down the chain. And that came up during our listening session. It was one item that kept reoccurring. And so I agree that we need to find a way that we are having that two-way communication with the system office so we can be informed and have the information that we need. Plus the system office can have information on what's going on in the field so they can keep their finger on the pulse as well. So I am in agreement, whatever way we can find to improve that communication. And I know, as you said, there are some that are communicating, but we need for everyone to kind of be on the same page.
Well, and I think it's great to get something once a month, but we're moving too fast for things to be monthly anymore. We're going to have more frequent, more timely, more current input and feedback. And it's great to hear the reports and hear the speeches, but in my opinion, every single speech and every single report needs to be backed up with a handout and a debrief. Patrick Fleming.
And the idea of a blank slate is critical to me here. A few of y'all that have worked with me for a while, email is a difficult communication tool. Now, y'all may look at me funny that way, but I've always found it's kind of a one-way street. And so knowing some of the modern technologies we have to have closer to real time, right, look and feel and information, accessibility to information, there are some products out there that we could use at the system level that could help us there. We've got a pretty robust solution with ServiceNow. We've got Salesforce under license here. We've got lots of opportunities there, not trying to solution, but just wanted to get that out on the table about looking at different ways to communicate and do these processes.
I'd just like to decide if we're going to use Zoom or Teams.
Hey, that came up.
Let's make a decision on which one we're going to do. And let's stick to it, because I don't, which one is it? I mean, we use Zoom today, but is it Zoom every time, or is it sometimes Teams? And what determines whether it's Zoom or Teams?
Exactly.
Right. And so Ms. Whitford, in our last board meeting, that came up with our learning management systems, right? And so how do we create, again, now it's good to have competition and options, because at local level, you're going to need that. But how do we reduce duplicate? And that's one thing that the Department of Information Technology and I work on, which is reducing, redundant services. And it shouldn't be threatening here, but instead that opportunity side of the challenge. And I'll be quiet and listen.
Brandy, are you still on? Or does she have to jump off?
I am.
Brandy, jump in on this. You've got a lot of expertise. Is there anything that now that you've got this new role, but you've been with us for many, many years and a lot of expertise, this is a great opportunity. Be thinking about the things that you want to see changed, and where you see, gee, I wish we could get that rule changed. I hear from folks all the time that they want to do blank.
Sure.
So be thinking about what those opportunities are, and let's widen that net a little bit. Is there anything that jumps out at you from this conversation that you'd like to zero in on?
There's nothing that jumps out immediately, just kind of listening and absorbing at this point.
Sure.
But definitely the comment that Bruce offered up about the maximum really is one thing that I hear from many colleges that they have a struggle with, because it provides that, that state maximum for colleges. Now,
Well,
some
that's not-
colleges do, of course, have other funding sources that they
Right.
are able to complement with. So my only other comment to something like that would be, absolutely, there is that state max, but at the local levels, some colleges have the opportunity to have county appropriations, and their employees can be split coded or split funded, but not
Right.
all colleges have that ability.
And-
So
and
I'm just kind of making mental notes and listening at this point.
Okay, that's a great example. I'm so glad you said that, because that really points to equity. That
Mhm.
really comes back to Lawrence's comment about the equity between the large and the small, the rural and the urban, the poor and the rich. And there are colleges that can hire an executive vice president and pay $150,000, $200,000 to attract the kind of talent and leadership they need. That's beyond the imagination of most of us. And we're limited by that cap. Most colleges, and this would be good to verify, I don't think there are many colleges that are getting county supplements beyond the president and the grounds maintenance facilities folks. That's atypical. That is not normal. So it does happen. And most of us don't have a foundation. Some do. Most of us don't have a foundation. Now, I think we've got someone, are they able to be here from CORD?
Yes, I'm here.
Stephanie, thank you. Thank you. Look forward to getting your feedback. What are your thoughts and reactions on this?
Sure. Well, I'm wearing two hats today. So from the Wake Tech perspective, I would caution some of the assumptions that I think are made that the larger schools have all of this additional money floating around. I think a point needs to be made that we are also competing with 10 universities in our backyard and
Sure.
RTP and very, very high salaries here in
Great
Wake
point.
County. So we don't have a choice. We have a lot of positions open right now. We have lost a lot of people to industry, particularly in IT and health sciences, but even in skilled trades, it has taken quite a bit of creativity just to hire some of our automotive faculty. We have a really beautiful building, but hiring the faculty needed to be ready for the number of students interested in pursuing those programs has been a real challenge. So I absolutely empathize with our smaller schools, but I did want to just point out that there are definitely some differences when you're in Charlotte and Winston-Salem and Greensboro and Raleigh when it comes to the competitiveness of that workforce, particularly on the career services side. Now, from an NC CORD perspective, of the 58 community colleges, pretty much 85 to 87% of them have some type of foundation.
Sure.
They are varying in sizes. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised that some of the smaller ones have larger assets than some of the larger ones. Sandhills is a great example. They have an enormous amount of assets and are much, much larger than Central Piedmont and Wake Tech, even though they're
I am reminded of that
smaller.
frequently. They're my neighbor to the north. So
Yes.
I'm frequently reminded of that. Thank you.
So there are
for bringing that
definitely
back
some
up.
creative
Yeah.
things happening there. But I will say that from the foundation side, we do have a listserv, and we have been talking a lot about how to get creative with additional stipends for faculty for key positions to try to help leverage and use private funding to offset the shortages on the state side. So you are right in that respect. That is definitely a topic. We have a conference coming up the fall, and we have already secured a session specifically for that because it's been such a hot topic, because presidents are asking their foundation people to think creatively on how they can fundraise to augment salaries.
Thank you so much. Part of the communications that I think has improved in the last couple of years has been the dashboards that Bill Snyder and his team have developed for us. Bill, you want to comment on that and tell us about how, if you see a role on how that can be expanded or better promoted or better used or better trained, and what the next step is for the dashboards and whether they have really a place in this plan, or what's the dashboard plus or the next step with dashboards happening to communicate, better communicate data and information to us?
Yep. So, I think a lot of, the data we receive is really term-based information. So a lot of things you see in our dashboards are based on things that happen, this semester, that semester, or over time. I think where kind of our next steps are is kind of leveraging more the near-time data, providing kind of point-and-click access to what is happening on the campus today. Because, every time that we report, it's reporting on what already happened. So I think, thinking more down the future as far as how can we assist colleges with enrollment management efforts, and really kind of tracking course enrollments. Those types of things that we find that a lot of colleges are doing a really good job, but it goes back to a resource issue and, an IR depth at some of our colleges that they can't do those deep dives and do a good job as far as tracking, where their college is at, today versus last year, and so forth. So I think that there's a role of system office, as far as expanding what we do currently from a data perspective to kind of do more of that near-time analysis that colleges can leverage for kind of that really near-time decision making.
So Bill, at my college, as you know, I've got a dashboard that's public facing, that's day to day, year to year, that's daily updated on enrollment and retention and multiple measures and metrics. So what's your sense of where colleges are in terms of having their own, and is that something that we can standardize or that we can have potentially rolled out so that nobody gets left behind? Obviously, if you want to use your own, you can, but is there a way to have that at the local level in addition to what you've got coming forward public facing from the system?
Yeah, so I think that the advantage of kind of doing something central is it's in addition to what some colleges are really doing right now. I think probably maybe half the colleges are doing a good job as far as tracking enrollment over time, but the other half do need some help. But I think everything we do system level, I think the benefit we have is peer analysis piece. So, President McGinnis, you might know what's happened in Richmond at this point in time compared to last year. But do you know where we are as a system as a whole at this point compared to last year? And I think a lot of times when we see kind of either increases or decreases, colleges may see that as a positive or negative, which really kind of not understand as far as what's happening as state as a whole. So I think that's kind of,
And I think it begs a bigger question. So if we take the step back and really ask the hard questions, is the data warehouse the right answer? Is the data warehouse working? Does it need to be updated? Is there what's the next step beyond the current data warehouse?
Yeah, so right now is we're getting ready to complete our transition from Sybase to SQL. So that step's almost done, which we're calling Data Warehouse 1.5. The next big step is what we're calling 2.0. And that is kind of maximizing the new data we have access to, that near-time data from the colleges, and creating our future data warehouse. So I think there's still preliminary conversations. There are a lot of resource restrictions right now as far as moving forward, but hopefully in the next year or two we'll have our future robust system that we can kind of do a lot of these things that we're talking about.
Then that needs to be on the strategic plan. If it's going to be rolling out in the next year or two, that's the kind of thing that we need to have in the strategic plan to let people know what's coming and what dominoes does it tip over. That's exactly the kind of thing that's already in the works, already committed to, but we don't know about it.
Right.
We're not aware of it. And there's no way to measure success and define whether it's at. So that's a great example. And I think Patrick, not Fleming, where's other Patrick at? I lost him. Patrick Crane, I think part of it is how many initiatives are already going on in the system office that belong on the strategic plan, that are in the works and have a timeline that's 2 to 3 years out, that need to belong here, that aren't on the strategic plan.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And
what initiatives are out there right now that we can capture that we don't have to invent? We just need to communicate them and share them.
Yeah, we've got a solid list of activities from the current strategic plan. They were reviewed by the board at the last meeting. I'm sure we have other ones that are not even part of that plan. So as we're developing our objectives, I think we'll be able to populate some strategies and tactics with what's already being done.
So that would be a great starting point for us for the next meeting. So part of the homework assignment If you can compile those and get those sent in to us so that we can see collectively going into the next meeting, because this is a recursive process, not going in with one conversation. If you can compile the things that you already have underway that are happening over a year, Patrick Fleming, your big conversion is got to be on this list. That's part of the strategic initiative. And even if we're porting it over from the current strategic plan to this one, it's going to live a different life. It's not going to look exactly the same. Has it been updated? Has it been modified? Is it reworded? So I think that gives us a running start. So I gave us a running start at the beginning by talking about our budget plan and our budget request. What are the other established pieces that we need to put on the game plan? Bill Snyder, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick too. There's something was kind of interesting to me is that fourth bullet in our system effectiveness as far as enhanced leadership enforcement system office. Now, I think the hard thing that we need to do is not identifying, well, it needs to be identifying what are the priorities of the colleges for system office, because to me, that is our number one job, is serving the colleges.
Thank you.
But the question to me is, what are the things that we're doing that are not priorities for the colleges? Because we are limited in staffing, and what are the things we need to stop doing so we can do these other things, either that, or we need to include system office and system funding.
Wow, that's a really great idea. Who gave that to you, Bill?
12 years experience.
Patrick Fleming, you have your hand up. Patrick Fleming, I think you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, President McGinnis. Bill is spot on, and I'd follow along in that line of discussion. A lot of times I'll hear local initiatives and projects. So how do we get a lens into what the local colleges are doing that initiatives at the system office are simply overwhelming the local college? I get that quite a bit. So how do we share, much like you say, this communication?
Two-way
Yep.
street. It's
Yep.
got to be a two-way street, and the doors have to be open on both sides.
Yep.
And if you don't ask us the question, we may not give you the answer.
That's right. And one question I asked when I first joined 8 years ago at I think it was an IPS conference, I asked the CIOs and system administrators how many colleges had project and program management offices. And they looked at me and said, well, not many. And so I don't know how that has changed across the 58, but how do we manage these enterprise level program and projects, and then the local, both local being the system office and the local college? I think it just becomes a capacity issue for our already limited resources.
Okay. Patrick Crane, I'm looking at the clock and we've got 18 minutes to 4. So I'm mindful of everybody's time. I don't want to leave anybody out. Who has not offered their input? Who has not jumped on board that wants to? I don't want to leave anybody behind. Really, really wonderful feedback. This is exactly what we need, how we need to do this, and how we need to keep building and staircasing this conversation. So who have I left out?
Doreen.
Doreen, my friend Doreen. Hey, Doreen. Tell us about capital funding. What are you hearing from colleges on capital funding and projects right now? I bet you're busy.
Doreen, if you are speaking, oh, there you go. Now you're unmuted.
All right.
Hey, Doreen.
Hello. Good to see you all. So yes, you know that SCIF has passed, and we are waiting for guidance on that SCIF, but we're moving forward. It is going down the train track, and as we get guidance from OSBM and such, we will disseminate that to the 58 community colleges.
What are the big concerns, questions, snags that you're hearing, other than the economy, the supply chain, the construction cost, availability of labor? What are the other issues, all of the above, that you're hearing from colleges right now about the process, I know we're working with state construction on getting that implemented. Brandy's actively involved in that. What else are you hearing from colleges that can fit into this?
they are having a hard time creating, to understand what size project they're going to move forward with because of the escalation of cost. Because every time they have like reached a certain phase and have figured out where they're going with, such as a new build or renovation, by the time they determine where they're going, the cost has increased 10-20% more. So it's not in their control. So basically they're doing well with what they have in the resources to try to establish, either they're reducing their project or they are totally stepping out of their project.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Always good to see you. Appreciate all your good work over the years for us. Doreen and I have worked on more than one or two projects together, so thank you for what you do for us.
Could I ask a question? When we have subject matter experts, like Doreen that just spoke, and I think she mentioned something about SCIF funding. I would imagine there's some of us that don't know what that is. So it would be very helpful if, as we discuss, as we have our conversations, just to identify things like that some of our subject matter experts know intimately that some of us may not understand.
Our acronyms aren't always our friend, are they? So Doreen or Brandy, either one, you want to talk to them and tell them what that is? I think a few of us do know, but you want to explain that for us.
That is the state capital infrastructure funds.
So that's the money that the $400 million that the state budget included this year, although we can't tap into the whole $400 million for community college projects, where they're doing pay-as-you-go instead of the bond. So the allocations came out, but they're squeezing the money out instead of giving us the whole amount at one time. It's on a pay-as-you-go process, so there are no bonds attached to it, so it didn't have to be approved by the voters. Am I describing that right, Brandy? Doreen? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say, will add that we are very thankful for being included in that as community colleges, because in the past, capital infrastructure funds that have come from state appropriations, colleges have not always been involved in that. So we are very happy and thankful for our system to been able to benefit from that.
Good point. So next steps. Let's talk about next steps real quick if I didn't leave anybody out. So homework assignments. Go back down this list. If you're at a college or one of our stakeholders or partners, be reflecting, talk to your staff, your members. What do we need to put in this strategic plan that is going to be good policy, that will incentivize and drive good action? If you're at the system office, what do we already have in the works or on the drawing board that's already been planned that doesn't currently have a home anywhere, that needs to be captured here and inserted? On the funding formula, what's broken that you have questions or concerns about? Brandy's our guru and a great resource for us. So if we can compile those questions within the next 2 weeks and have sort of a deadline of 2 weeks from today, and I had that date written down, May the 10th, give everybody 2 weeks. And Patrick Crane, our next meeting is on the 24th of May. So that gives you and Ann 2 weeks to get those cleaned up, scrubbed, and get those out to everybody a couple of days in advance of our meeting. I'm a big believer in reading things first before we talk about them. So we'll try to get everybody a set of those new talking points out early, and then you can have time to reflect on it. Now, in the meantime, Patrick, our doors are open, correct? Our phone lines are open. Our doors are open. And we welcome any and all calls, questions, emails, feedback. If we didn't do this the way you want it done, let us know. And we'll certainly try to do better. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Patrick, and then we can sort of maybe take some final comments and closing thoughts for the next steps. Patrick, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, President McGinnis. Appreciate all of your comments today and guiding us through this conversation. I think I've captured what the homework assignments are. I'll look to Ann Bacon as well to help me flesh those out. Send a follow-up email to everybody who's on the group. I'll also send out the slides from today just so you have those as a reference as well. And we'll compile that information again, due back on the 10th. We'll get it out to you a couple days before the meeting. And just to reiterate a couple themes that have come up today. You know, President McGinnis said something earlier in the conversation about not just how to pay talent, but how to utilize talent. And I think that frame applies to so much of what we're challenged to talk about today, is not just how do we get more, do more, but how do we operate more effectively in the problems that we're trying to solve. And, you know, we have Ms. Whitford on the call, so I won't speak for the board, but what I have been hearing clearly from the board is truly this is an opportunity to reset, rethink, reframe, and change how we work collectively across the community college system. Not an easy task, but I think opportunities like this do not come along very often. And I think the opportunity is sincere, is real right now. And so really appreciate your time, your willingness to serve on this committee and to engage with your colleagues at your institution, in your affinity groups, to kind of bring your best thoughts forward so we can truly set out a roadmap that will guide the system for the next 4 years.
Ms. Whitford, any parting thoughts for the group?
I just want to echo a couple of things Patrick and you have just said. I do believe this is a unique moment in time that things have aligned, the stars have aligned, that we can address some foundational, fundamental issues in our system and say, why are we doing the things we're doing? Is it the best way to do things today? It was back then, but is it today? And we have an opportunity to make some really wonderful changes down the road, some short-term, some long-term. And I've got to tell you that I'm encouraged by the conversation and comments by you folks that are online today, because I just have heard some great things, and I think we're going in the right direction. And I just thank everybody for their contribution.
Thank you so much. And Patrick, if you're okay, I think we can begin to adjourn and look forward to everybody's questions, feedback, and we can go full steam ahead for the next couple of months. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.